So it's been almost 4 years since I saw this drone at CES 2020. This is the V-Copter, also from Zero Robotics. At that show, they had the Hover Passport, which is very, very similar to this one right here, which I'm going to be talking about today, which is the HOVERAir X1. And at that show, they also had the V-Copter, which is a bicopter, one of the first ones that I've seen that's actually in production. I tested it. It actually flew really, really well. And then Zero Robotics reached out to me recently to see if I wanted to test out the new Air X1. And I was like, absolutely. Like I said, it's been 4 years, so I know that they can make drones, really stable drones in the air. So I was excited to test this one out. And Zero is sponsoring this video by sending me this drone to review. However, everything in the video is going to be of my opinion, the pros and the cons. Now for me, when I first got the drone, I honestly thought it was kind of gimmicky. I was thinking, okay, how good can a drone be that is this small? How well will it perform in the air? And to be honest, just to cut to the chase, this thing actually surprised me as far as how stable it was. The one thing I really like is that it is super simple and intuitive as far as the buttons. There's only 2 buttons on here. One is the remote, one is the power as well as the activation button. And it was simple enough where I was able to just tell my kids what to do, and they were able to perform pretty much all of the intelligent flight modes that this thing has to offer. And before we jump into the modes and the video samples, let's talk real quickly about the camera and the body of the HOVERAir X1. Now let's first talk about size and weight. As you can see here, it is super small, compact, and it only weighs about 125 grams, which is really good, so you don't have to worry about registering your drone. Next thing you see here right away, this full cage that wraps around all of the 4 propellers. That way you don't get stuck on anything. It's able to take a little bit of a beating on the sides in case you were to bump into things. Then of course, when you want to travel, all you have to do is toss it into a little bag that they provide. Throw this into here, and then like I said, you can actually toss this right into your pocket or your bag. Makes traveling super simple because you don't have to have another remote control. You don't have to have anything else with this thing. Now, when it comes down to video resolution, it does shoot at a maximum 2.7, 30 frames a second, or 1080p at 60 frames. And that just seems like one of the limitations you're gonna have with a small camera, small sensor. 2.7 at 30 frames a second is still really, really good. And especially when you're shooting in bright daylight, that's when you're gonna have the best quality video. Smaller cameras and smaller sensors don't really do that great in low light scenarios. And if you are just doing a lot of stuff for social media, 2.7 and 1080p will probably be good enough for a lot of those situations. Of course, if you wanted the 4K, higher resolution, bigger cameras, then you're gonna wanna go up to the bigger style drones. Speaking of that gimbal, they are using what they call triple stabilization. You do have a little bit of stabilization with the gimbal. There are some rubber dampeners in there. You're also using EIS, or electronic image stabilization. So you are getting it stabilized in camera. And it also has horizon leveling. So if you're used to hearing horizon leveling with action cameras, where you can actually move the drone or your action camera, left to right, and it'll maintain that horizon. You also have that here. Now, with this drone being so small, light, and compact, we don't have some of the advanced features that you have on some of the other drones, like obstacle avoidance. There are no sensors on the front or on the side to dodge any trees or buildings or anything like that. Now, when it comes to memory and storage, there is no slot for a micro SD card. The memory is actually built in, which is a 32 gig memory, internal memory, and 8 gigs of that is actually taken up by the firmware. So you're only left with about 23, 24 gigs of internal memory. When it comes to the battery, all you do is pop it off from the top right here. And the combo I got actually came with 2 batteries, and they're actually pretty good. They're 10, 50 milliamp batteries. They don't last too long. I mean, I was able to actually produce a bunch of videos, do all the modes with it. It's not meant to sit here and film for a long time. It's really meant to just grab a couple of short clips that you're then gonna throw into, I would say, your bigger story of a video. Now, with the drone so small and light, there are of course gonna be some cons to that. Wind is gonna be one thing. So if you're out there and it's really, really gusty, really windy, this is not a drone that you're gonna wanna put up there. This is really only meant to take on light breezes or gentle breeze. Another thing you're limited to on this drone is 15 meters in height. So like I said, this isn't the type of drone where you're gonna sit out here and fly it to the edge of a pier. This is something to get really close proximity shots. Now, those are the main specs of the drone. Now let's jump right into these, which are the intelligent modes. that are located right here at the very top of the X1. Now what's great is that out of the box, once you activate it, you are able to take this thing up in the air right away. You don't necessarily have to go into the app and change any settings. It will just work by pressing the power button here, as well as choosing which mode of the 6 that you want to fly. Now the bigger benefit of syncing this up to your phone is that you are able to unlock all the settings. Now each one of these modes has different settings that you're able to change. So if you want the drone to fly a little bit further distance away from you, if you want the drone to fly and rise, if you wanted to stay lower to the ground, you are able to make those changes through the app so that next time you go out there and fly, it'll then save those changes. So every time you then switch the modes here, it'll automatically go based on the last setting that you put in. Now the first mode we have here is hover. Now what's really good about hover is that all you have to do with this drone is simply press the power, press the mode, which is gonna be the first one, which is hover, and then you're gonna press the power button here and it'll automatically launch from the palm of your hand. Once the drone is up in the air, you'll see these lights change from green to red. Red means you are actually recording now onto the internal memory. Now when you're in hover mode, it'll do exactly that. It'll go up in the air from your palm and then sit there and hover. Now you do have a couple options if you want the drone to automatically follow you based on facial recognition with the camera. You could turn that on or off. So if you want the drone to hover and not follow anybody, you can just turn that off and it'll just sit there recording. Or if you want the drone to follow you, you can actually turn that setting on and then the drone will still hover, but then it'll turn left to right depending if you're walking around. So in hover mode, it really does do that. It just hovers and then you can choose whether you want it to turn and follow you or if you want it to just stay still. Next mode we have is the zoom out mode, which is kind of known as the droney function. Again, if you want the droney to be closer to you, you're able to change that setting in the app. If you want it to go further out, I believe it goes about 30 to 50 feet away. I will check to see what my app is, but you're able to take that all the way out and the drone will launch from your palm and then pull out away from you, fly up if you want it to rise, and it'll automatically fly back. The great thing about all of these intelligent flight modes is that once it's done completed, it'll go back to where it started, and then all you have to do in order for you to land it is literally stick out your hand underneath the drone. The sensors here will sense your hand and it'll automatically land just like that. I was a little confused at first. I was like, how is it gonna come back to me if I'm not piloting the drone? But like I mentioned, once you choose your intelligent flight mode and once you launch it from your palm, it will then return back to that location. And all you have to do is just stick your hand right under and let it land. Next mode we have is the follow mode, and this one actually was impressive. I didn't think that this small of a drone would be able to keep up. I just did a quick jog down the hill, and this thing actually kept up to me. The one thing I did test too, which a lot of drones can't do, and this one was able to perform, is actually track while I was changing elevation. So when I was walking up the hill, it was able to still track and maintain the distance and track me while going up. Some other drones out there still can't do that. Even more advanced drones cannot track at elevation. This one was able to follow me up the hill to the top of the hill and just kind of keep strolling and walking through, and it still maintained that distance behind me. Now, if you want the drone to follow you at a quicker speed, this thing can only follow about 15 miles an hour. So if you're trying to follow on a bike and going a little bit too fast, this thing won't keep up with you. But if you're just trying to do a jog, a run, or if you're on a bike going fairly slow, it is able to follow you from behind. Next mode we have is orbit. So the drone will just launch from your palm, it'll move backwards, and then it'll orbit around the subject or around you. Of course, depending on what you set as your distance, it'll then go back and create that radius. And it'll automatically create one circle around you or the subject, come back to the starting point, and then again, just put your palm out and it'll land right back into your palm. It only does one orbit. So if you wanted to continuously keep going around, it does not do that. All the intelligent modes just basically do it once and then come back to the starting point. Next intelligent mode we have is bird's eye. Now the drone will launch from your palm and basically just go straight up in the air, and the camera will then start pointing straight down as the drone kind of goes above you. Camera pointed down, and then once it's done, it'll just come straight back down. And of course, depending on what you have set on the app, it'll go up to that specific height. And the final mode we have is the custom mode, which is really nice because that custom mode now, they have 3 different options you can have in there. I have the custom mode set to snapshot, where snapshot basically will have the drone go up and pull away, and all you do is put a gesture up and it'll automatically take a photo of you, which I thought was pretty cool. Next custom mode you're able to switch to is Dolly mode, and I thought this is really cool. So if you want the drone to follow you from the front, so it'll actually go backwards and you can actually walk towards the drone, you can actually do that with Dolly track set through that custom mode. And the final custom mode is manual, where you can now fly the drone manually through the app. Now, of course, like I mentioned, you are limited as far as distance and height goes, but at least it gives you that ability to pilot and fly the drone and not just have the intelligent modes there for you. You can actually do at least some fun flying if you really wanted to. And the final feature I thought was really cool about this drone is that you are able to record your audio while flying the drone if you're using the app. All right, so one of the custom modes is Dolly track, where the drone is about 10 feet away from me, and it's actually moving backwards. But what's cool is that there's also an audio feature here, which allows you to record your audio. So how does the audio sound? But it is supposed to eliminate the propeller noise. So most audio you'll hear when you're flying a drone, you will hear that super loud, windy noise, but it's supposed to remove that. So how does the audio sound coming from my phone through the Hover app, which is supposed to remove the hover noise, which is pretty loud because the drone is not that far away. And I'm also in this kind of Dolly mode, where it's actually moving backwards while I'm walking forward. Now, my overall thoughts on this drone are actually super positive because they just kept it super simple. It's nothing extravagant except for you to get out there with a small drone, really light, and get at least decent quality videos and photos out of this thing, and make it simple enough where my kids are able to perform the actions. My kids are able to use it and do the intelligent flight modes, have it land in their hand, and fold it up, put it back in their bag, put it back in their pocket, and be off onto the next adventure. And of course, when it comes down to the cons, I think these are things that, you know, you're just kind of limited to because of hardware and some of the software stuff. So, I mean, if you expect a 4K video out of it, you're just not gonna get it. 2.7, really good for social media. Now, wind resistance, again, if you're flying at higher elevations, windy, gusty, not something that you're gonna wanna do with this type of drone. And finally, the negative thing I thought is just the price. Of course, it is a little bit steep. It's a little bit over $400. And then if you get the combos, they come out like mid 400 or so. There's a bunch of different pricing because we are in the holiday season. So there are some deals on Amazon. There's also deals on their website. Huge thanks to Zero Robotics for sending me this drone to test out. If you are interested in picking up the X1, links will be down below in the video description. As always, if you guys got some value from this video, a big like would be much appreciated. This is also Anastacio with FlytPath.com. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.